Hello and welcome to this new episode of the NBA Breakdown powered by Pinnacle. We've got Joe Vardon, Chief Basketball Honcho at The Athletic, Seth Partnow of the Stats Bomb, back as ever for our breakdown of the NBA and reaching that proper business end of the season. Now, all the stuff that we've talked about over the last few months, well, it's kind of all irrelevant now, isn't it? Because we're building up to kind of where it matters the most and the end of this 2023 campaign. And we're looking forwards, not backwards. The postseason playoffs are already upon us. Joe has been traveling around still on the road at the moment as well. And I suppose both of you have been following this kind of opening first few days of the playoffs. It's really difficult to kind of know where to start because there's so many different bits and pieces. I've been reading The Athletic, Joe. I've been reading so many different things, different theories about a whole host of different teams. Obviously, we've had some sort of star names not being able to feature for some of the bigger sides as well. Joe, you've been following the Heat a little bit. You were following the Heat prior to the playoffs. What have you picked up whilst being on the road, first of all?
Yeah, I started with the Heat for the play-in and was impressed. Maybe I shouldn't have been, but I was impressed with their desire to get that done and get into the playoffs as an 8 seed. There was this strange but palpable feeling in South Beach heading into the play-in finale against Chicago that Miami had just been through too much. There was too much disappointment after being the number 1 seed in the East last year, failing to get to the finals in Game 7, and then just being mediocre all year, that the Heat would pack it in, basically, and try again next year. And that wasn't the case. They played great and beat the Bulls, and then go up to Milwaukee and win Game 1. And right now, that is a series. We have Tyler Hero's out; he's hurt with a broken hand. He's done for the playoffs. And Giannis, an MVP candidate, has missed. He missed Game 2, so you're wondering where that's going to go. But kudos to the Heat for not just for not only not laying down, but then getting in there right away and mixing it up with the Bucks.
I'm just going to give the listeners a bit of a kind of time frame as to when we are actually recording this, just so that they know that we're not after timing or before timing or whatever it may be. So it is 1-1 in that series at the moment. And look, Seth, you've got obviously ties to the Bucks and Milwaukee. What are your initial thoughts then on what you've seen so far in these playoffs? Because it's pretty obvious that obviously they have been missing Giannis as well. And just for the listeners, Pinnacle.com, Heat are at 4s on Pinnacle to win that series. I think that's pretty long odds. From what you've seen so far, though, I mean, do you expect the Bucks just to kind of rip through the rest of this series, no problem, or is it going to be a bit more difficult than perhaps we're giving the Heat credit for?
Short version is yes. Slightly longer version is, if you look at the history of the Bucks in the playoffs under Mike Budenholzer, there is a very weird tendency to play very poorly in the first games of series, even series that they are the better team. And they, despite the fact that over the course of the last several years of NBA history, the team that wins Game 1 wins about 2/3 of the series. The Bucks have won, I think, 7 of 11 prior to this year series where they lost Game 1. I might have that slightly off, but they are regularly behind in series. They regularly put up terrible offensive performances in Game 1s of series for whatever reason, and then sort of normalize across that. You combine that with the fact that in series over the last couple in the playoffs over the last couple of years, they've actually performed pretty well without Giannis, in large part because it seems like they remember Brook Lopez is huge and at one point was a 20-point per game scorer. And while most of the time they use him as more of a floor spacer, when Giannis has been out, and this was the Eastern Conference Finals against the Hawks 2 years ago, and then Game 2 where I was at Game 2. They basically throw him the ball at the front of the rim and say, go mash. And it works pretty well.
Yeah. Okay. The play-in tournament, just kind of going backwards a little bit, does that kind of have any bearing on what we see in the playoffs? And is it good for the schedule? Is it good for consumers of basketball? Is it good for the teams? Does it give teams a bit of a chance to kind of build a little bit of momentum, perhaps, if they've been struggling for that? Well, they've obviously been struggling for that if they were in the play-in tournament to begin with, right? So does that give teams a bit of a chance to build? How does it kind of affect what we're looking at here?
I would say the first thing is at times prior to the play-in, the first round could be a little bit of a snooze. You've got generally about 4 series that you know how it's going to go, and it's going to go that way quickly, maybe as many as 5 or 6 of the first round series. But jumping right in with the intensity of single elimination games actually gets really the playoffs going right away. In terms of what it means for the longer playoffs, I think it's almost more about the higher seeded teams, the top 6 teams in each conference, kind of getting themselves right physically. Getting that 4 or 5 days off from the end of the season to sort of ramp up and hit the playoffs at full strength. And then with the playoff schedule, especially in the first round, whereas how spaced out it is, I think we're getting much more of up or as peak physical condition as you can be after 6 months of play. I think it's really contributed to that.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. Just looking at which some of the teams that have kind of found form a little bit, then kind of coming into the playoffs. I want to talk about the Lakers a little bit because we've not really spoke in glowing terms about them all season long, with good reason. Obviously, there was a lot of the noise, and Joe, you covered a lot of the LeBron stuff, which was obviously incredibly exciting. He's had a bit of trash talk this week in the press as well, which is always a little bit spicy. At the time of recording, they're tied at 1 apiece with the Grizzlies. Could they mount something? Am I kind of? I mean, you can never write them off, right? This is one of these things. But the Grizzlies lacking a little bit in depth was kind of the chatter, wasn't it? But actually, he then look at the third choice guy, Tillman, is it, who came in with something like 22 points the other day. So that was in game 2. So are actually the Lakers going to be up against it? Have they got their work cut out here?
Well, I'm with the Lakers now, and I'm on the Grizzlies Lakers series for the duration, and there is a lot to get to. I think it starts with LeBron though, and Dillon Brooks' comments calling him old, tired, said he wasn't as good now as he used to be. And you could say that Dillon Brooks, he's the Grizzlies' probably best on-ball defender, plays with the defensive player of the year, but he's not an accomplished player, and he's a bit of a carnival barker. And for him to say what he said about LeBron is disrespectful, if for no other reason than LeBron James is arguably the greatest player of all time. I mean, he's in the discussion. So those are things you just don't say about a guy, regardless of where he is at in his career, because of what he's done, the opportunities he's created for everybody else. And so that's all true. But the fact remains, Dillon did say it, and we all wrote it. And it's been the talk of the league for the last few days. And so now LeBron and the Lakers do find themselves in a situation where, what are they going to do about it? In the past, when people had said such things about LeBron James, he has always responded in kind, not with his words, but with play. I'm most recently reminded of in 2016 when Klay Thompson, with the 3-1 lead in the finals, said to LeBron, "Hey man, this is a man's league." LeBron responded with consecutive 41-point games and then a triple-double in game 7. So you think that he is going to respond to Dillon, and he's going to go off, and the Lakers have changed themselves. Anthony Davis is healthy. They do have enough to win this series. But if that doesn't happen and Dillon is proved right, that says something not about LeBron's career, but about where he is now and where they are moving forward. So fair or unfair, LeBron finds himself in a position, again, of not having to prove himself, but having to answer a critic and probably the outcome of a series depending on that answer.
So does that cause them a bit of a conundrum then, going into the remainder of the series? Because that might actually, is that going to come into their thinking? Seth, you've got your hand up, so come on, chime in.
I think it does, because the interesting thing about the game 1 win is, where was the ball when the Lakers had it at the end of the game? It wasn't LeBron. AD had some, but who was setting him up? It was Austin Reeves. And this is not, this is not to denigrate Austin Reeves, who's turned himself into a very good player and has probably made himself over the last couple months of the season, made himself 40, 50, $60 million on his next contract. And so the ball being in his hands, it's justifiable. And so that's the really interesting thing here. And that creates maybe some of the tension you're talking about. Are we going to go LeBron get back, or are we going to do the best thing for us to win? Are those the same things? And this is really one of the first times, I've talked about this before. I wrote the first is LeBron slowing down article in about February of 2016. So I'm a little gun shy on going back to that. But at a certain point, time comes for us all. And this is really the first time you've said, okay, not only is LeBron slowing down, but should somebody else have the ball? And that's I feel like that's, as weird as that is, that's kind of an open question right now. LeBron had the ball in game 2, and you don't want to go 1-to-1, but their offense was much better in game 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is that what you picked up, Joe? Is that what you kind of gathered?
If you look at LeBron's top line statistics in this series, they're fine. I think he's averaging like 25-ish points. He's like almost 10 or 11 rebounds. He's assisting okay, but he's taken 29 shots and 16 of them are threes, and only 4 of those threes have gone in. So Dillon Brooks is preventing LeBron. He is either preventing LeBron from getting to the hole, or in a short series of 2 games, one of them, LeBron saw that Rui Hachimura and Austin Reeves were the open hot options, and he rightfully kind of stayed out of the way. LeBron does have this in him. I don't know how much the foot injury affects it. He has looked slower to me in these first 2 games. And I think I totally agree with Seth on that. There's no doubt. But throughout the course of this regular season, he scored 40 or more points 5 times. He had a stretch where he scored 30 or more in 7 games in a row. So he can still do this. I guess one other difference is, for the first time in a very long time, certainly almost ever with the Lakers, that he is surrounded with players who you would at least consider to be decent options. You have Anthony Davis, who was supposed to be the alpha of the offense. He is capable of doing that. He had a terrible game 2. But Reeves, Rui has been awesome in this series so far. D'Angelo Russell has been bad, but he's there. Malik Beasley's coming off the bench. So they have options. LeBron has always prided himself on making the right play and being and playing the way that his team needs him to play to win. So I think it's more of a question of just, what do the Lakers need in these final 5 games? If they need him to dominate the ball to win, he will do that. But if Anthony can get it going, if these other guys stay hot while the Grizzlies continue to double Anthony, then LeBron will try to find them.
Yeah. Hey, it's going to be really fascinating, actually, isn't it? I mean, I can see why you're kind of on the road with them and actually really looking forward to this, because this is, it is. Look, is there an argument to be had here that the Lakers, if there's going to be any team and any kind of coaching structure and any player who is actually, like you say, possesses that kind of self-awareness about what his team requires, if it's going to be any team that actually does kind of, dig deep, dredge deep, and find what they need, it is this Lakers team, right? Because of all the cocktail that you just kind of mentioned to try and get over the line here and then haul themselves even further.
Well, we'll see. I don't think, I don't know that you can trust Anthony Davis right now. And then these other guys that they're relying on, a lot of them, 2 of them anyway, are playoff novices. So we'll see what they're made of. But LeBron's a 4-time champion. Anthony won 1. The Grizzlies get paid too. So, and they are a scrappy group. They're together. They're the number 2 team in the West. Ja Morant has been hurt wasn't able to play game 2, but they play very well without him. So, and one of the things the Grizzlies always do is they seem to cover for each other well. Like when Ja can't play because he's either in trouble for guns or because he's hurt, the Grizzlies find ways to win. They cover for him. When Dylan gets himself suspended, runs up technicals, runs his mouth, like the Grizzlies cover for him. They play up to sort of back up the words that he uses. So they will be game for this. And, Jaren Jackson's off to a great start in this series. Desmond Bane hasn't shot it great so far. I think he's dealing with a little bit of a foot issue. But I like the Grizzlies system as much as any system in the NBA. And I think Taylor Jenkins, there are questions about the control he has over his team because of Ja's off-court stuff and some of the things Dylan does or says. But when it comes to playing the right way, Taylor gets his guys, no matter who's on the floor, to do it, I think, more often than most other coaches in this league.
Where else do we look away from that brilliant series? Because it is going to be great. And like we say, we're recording, it's one apiece. Seth, where else are we going in terms of the playoffs? Where are you looking at and going, yeah, that's going to be tight, that's going to be edgy? Or equally, where are you looking and going, wow, they've looked really good so far? I'm talking Suns, etc.
I think sticking in the West, I think the other place that you have to go in the West is Kings Warriors. So we're recording the day after Game 3, when despite Draymond Green being suspended, the Warriors got what has been a typical Warriors playoff formula where their defense is great and Steph Curry does enough on offense to bring them out with a big assist, literally and figuratively, from Kevon Looney, who had 9 assists. I think that that the Warriors are quite possibly going to just roll through and win the series in 6. The Kings shot abysmally last night, and the suspension of Draymond Green, which, while I didn't agree with, I thought that getting ejected from the game was the right call and was probably sufficient punishment. I have zero sympathy for a habitual line stepper. But I think the psychology of that turned what was a free roll for the Kings going to Golden State up 2-0 into almost a must win. And they played that way. They're a team that plays fast, but after playing quickly but effectively in the first 2 games, they were in a hurry for a lot of last night. And you could see that's we got to get this one, because if we lose this one, then Draymond comes back, then it's 2-2, then the pressure, you can see that almost those wheels turning. So I've enjoyed this series greatly so far, but I am very worried about the Kings right now, and I think that the Warriors I want to say more likely than not, I think the most likely outcome is Warriors in 6 at this point.
That's very interesting, particularly for listeners, because if they can kind of get on this fairly quickly, out at 3s at the moment on Pinnacle to win that series, and at 2-1 down, and what you're saying there, Seth, that's worth a nibble, definitely. Okay, looking elsewhere, Philly pretty much good as through. You'd say at 3 zip up, and then you've got Celtics 2-0 up against the Hawks and looking pretty good. The Nuggets, they can kind of go on cruise control right now, can't they? There's no alarm bells really anywhere else on the draw, is there?
No, I don't think so. Certainly not with Denver. I want to go back. I want to go talk about the East for a minute. I want to talk about 3 teams. I want to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers, who are strolling through Brooklyn. That's 3-0. But Embiid was a little banged up in game 3. If I were Doc Rivers, I would sit him in game 4. They have such command of that series, but they're headed towards that showdown in the second round with the Boston Celtics. And it really is, I think, now or never for this Philadelphia franchise. They've been playing great going back to March. They've had an easy series. And if you think that Joel is going to be healthy in that second round, then I think this is as good a chance as they're going to have to get where they want to go. But, you know, we're talking about the defending Eastern Conference champs, and, you know, James Harden, you know, has the track record that he has. So we will see going forward there. But I'm interested to see how Philadelphia handles this final, you know, this game 4 and what they do with Joel. The other series I wanted to mention briefly is just the Cavs and the Knicks. They are at 1-1 as of this recording, and I don't know that you can say which way that one is going to go yet. The winner will play the winner of Milwaukee and Miami, who we all assume would still be in Milwaukee. But the Knicks took game 1. Julius Randle looks awesome. Jalen Brunson is obviously game. The Cavs played pretty poorly in game 1, but JB Bickerstaff made some huge adjustments. He shrunk his rotation down to 7 guys, and one of them is Danny Green, who when they acquired him on the open market, they didn't play him at all, and now he's in there. Jetty Osman is the other one playing. He's gone away from Ricky Rubio and Dean Wade and Lamar Stevens. Darius Garland was awesome in game 2, and Evan Mobley was awesome in game 2. So that series, I think, is going to go 7. And I'm not sure you could say who you want or who you think is coming out. I've picked the Cavs, but this seems like a really interesting and evenly matched series.
That's interesting. And if they do, you know, if the Cavs or the Knicks, you know, whoever it is who advances, do you give them either of those two sides much of a chance against the Bucks? Obviously, we don't know how they're going to be faring in terms of Giannis and other injuries, etc. But just kind of off the bat, you know, looking much further ahead here, is that, you know, are the Bucks absolutely too strong for either of those two sides?
I think the matchup is fairly straightforward with the Bucks against the Knicks. I think that the Cavs do not have much depth, as Joe sort of alluded to, with them shrinking their rotation. But the top end talent, you know, Donovan Mitchell being able to take over games, the fact that the Bucks have at times struggled with defending kind of quicker guards, and the Cavs having 2 of them, the Cavs having 2 good interior defenders in Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. I still think that the sort of the lack of bulk among those 2 bigs and the lack of depth overall with the Cavs, it tilts the series very strongly in favor of the prospective series, very strongly in favor of Milwaukee. But I think that the Cavs would have a better chance and sort of more resistance than the Knicks, whose offense will play very well into what Milwaukee would like to do defensively. And I just think it is a and then not really having a lot for Giannis in particular, assuming he's out with a back injury, but I think by the second round, we're largely expecting him to be fine, I think.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's a lot of hypotheticals, and like we mentioned, there are some big stars missing from, you know, particularly this weekend heading forward. Seth?
If we're looking ahead to second round matchups in the East, I want to highlight an individual player matchup, which I am kind of, again, assuming the Celtics and Sixers advance fairly straightforwardly, as it looks like they're going to do. The Derek White, Tyrese Maxey matchup in the second round among players who do not have huge profiles. I am fascinated. I am here for that. I think that's 2 of the underrated guards in the East, kind of going at it, and kind of whether Maxey's speed and scoring or White's kind of all around basketball goodness. I think that's a potential huge swing factor in that series. And for like basketball nerds, like that's the kind of stuff we get off on.
Basketball goodness. That's nice. That's really good. Joe Vardon, give us some of your basketball goodness here. Just going back to the West, because like we said, you know, the Celtics can probably afford themselves a little bit of rotation, and like you mentioned, you know, for Philly, the luxury of being 3-0 up is the fact that you can rotate a little bit. Joel Embiid might get a little bit of rest. Just going back to the other conference then. So the Nuggets looking fairly comfortable. The Suns, we've not talked too much about the Suns. We did a little bit on them in the last podcast, I seem to remember. How is that meshing going? And how is it all kind of coming together? Because obviously they made a few little sort of moves in the trades. How's that kind of looking from a Suns perspective?
James, I'm glad you brought this up. I happened to be at Game 3, just because the series I'm on, the travel day shifted us to LA, and that's where Game 3 between the Suns and the Clippers were. And I do have some thoughts on this. Ty Lue, the coach of the Clippers, has elected to take Durant out of this series and make Devin Booker beat his team. Taking Durant out is relative. He still had 25 or 26 points the other night, but he is not getting the touches that he's used to. The Clippers are two hands shoving him off of his cuts, and even when he's just standing there, like they are bodying him up when he doesn't have the ball. Devin Booker, the last 2 games, has destroyed them because of it. He is beating every coverage that Ty has thrown at him. And so you say the Suns are beginning, after a rough game 1, they are beginning to play a little bit better. Now, the caveat is Paul George is not playing in this series, and now Kawhi Leonard again is hurt. He has a sprained right knee. He missed Game 3. We don't know about his availability going into Game 4. The Clippers cannot win this series without Kawhi Leonard. This is very frustrating for the Clippers, who have had to deal with injuries to Kawhi or PG or both since the moment the two of them walked in the door. Highly frustrating. And it all comes at a time where Ty Lue has found a way to resurrect Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook has been awesome in this series. He had 30 plus the other night, and it is an efficient. He is playing efficiently. He does not look anything like he looked when he played for the Lakers, and it's fascinating and refreshing to see. But it's coming at a time when they need Kawhi against a loaded Suns team, and it's just he's not there.
Okay. Seth, have you managed to sort of pick anything up on that? It's good that Joe actually was kind of there for that, just by coincidence. That was an unexpected bit of basketball goodness there.
I'm smiling when Joe mentioned Westbrook and efficient in the same, because we don't usually hear that. At the same time, he was 3 of 19 in Game 1, and it may have been the best 3 of 19 performance we've ever. Like he's actually like it's hard to be a positive net contributor and shoot that poorly, but he made a lot of the plays that won them the game down the stretch of that. So credit there. I do want to go back to the Suns and the fact that a lot of it was made of the Suns being 7-0 with kind of their team together after the trade for Kevin Durant. But the fact was they played 0 playoff teams. They played the Nuggets twice. Both games the Nuggets were sitting everybody. So it's saying that they played basically 0. And I think we're seeing that even winning these games, it's not easy. And some of that's credit to the Clippers. The Clippers with Kawhi especially are very good. Like if you told me that Kawhi was healthy and the Clippers went on a run, made the finals, I would be surprised but not shocked. At the same time, the fact that they need Devin Booker to be as incandescent as he's been to win these games is worrisome. I think. I mean, you can win the championship that way by having your star players do star things for 2 months. It's not the easiest road to go, but again, that's why you assemble the talent they have. This is a little bit what we talked before, and we were like pump the brakes on the Suns a little bit. I think this is a little what we're talking about. They can, but it's not going to be easy.
Okay. This is interesting. We've kind of given some thoughts on pretty much every matchup here, and yes, we understand that it is a bit strange. Listeners kind of doing this as the series are already underway. Just going back to the conversation that we kind of always have when we wrap things up here on the NBA breakdown. From what we've seen then so far, does it kind of change who we think's going to be the overall kind of winners? It's not really deviated too much throughout the season here on the podcast, but I just want to get both of your thoughts collectively then on if there's anything where you kind of go, actually, you know what, I've thought this for the last 6 months, but now I'm kind of changing my mind, or no, I'm absolutely kind of resolute in my thinking in terms of who's going to, be the NBA champions. Seth, you've got a bit of a grin on your face. So
I am stubborn. Our first pod we did this year, I said Bucks over Nuggets, and largely because it's been straightforward for the Nuggets, and everyone else has shown a little bit of a struggle. I don't see any reason to deviate from that. I mean, you would worry more about the Bucks, I guess, but I'm not. As we talked about up front, I'm not actually worried about the Bucks in this series, and they have an easier second round series than the other half of the bracket. So I'm gonna stick with that.
Okay, that's nice, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to allow myself, at least for this pod, to fall victim to recency bias. I have been concerned about the Bucks' health. I think, I don't know about on this pod, but I've been walking around town in October talking about the Bucks maybe winning in the finals, and then Giannis getting hurt right away. You're always concerned about Middleton's leg. So I'm concerned there, and I think the East is a little bit more open than it otherwise might have been. The Nuggets are the team we've talked about probably the least today. They have looked great in this series, and they're playing a little bit better defensively, I think, than maybe we thought they might. But the Suns are going to put a tremendous amount of pressure on them, and we will see. We will see if what they do to Jokic when the Nuggets are on defense, if they can stand up to that. So, Bucks, Celtics, Sixers out of the East, Suns, maybe Denver. I mean, that's a big second round. I think those are the five teams that you're thinking about right now.
That makes all sense as well. And for any listeners, you can go to pinnacle.com. All odds are correct at the time of recording as well. That was fairly straightforward. We kind of whipped through all the different matchups at the moment. We'll reconvene soon at the conclusion of these kind of first round matchups, and hopefully we've been kind of proved correct and there's not been any kind of ridiculous comebacks from those teams who we were saying, yeah, they're good as through, yeah, no problem. So we'll see. Thanks so much to you both, and yeah, we'll be back next month ahead of the conference finals. Also, just keep ahead. Keep an eye across Pinnacle's content. Basically, there's plenty coming up throughout April and May. Soccer season coming to an end, transitioning onto major season of both golf and of course the French Open tennis as well. And there's all the NBA predictions articles on the betting resources page as well of the website. There's also, and I'm not going to pressure you guys on this because we're running out of time, but there is the NCAA and the Euro League odds up on the website as well. So at Pinnacle on Twitter and Pinnacle Sports as well. So Joe Vardon, Seth Partnow, thank you very much for the moment. And just a reminder to always gamble responsibly.